here we go. Episode 16.
Mm-hmm.
We are we're live
We
on
are.
episode 16. Welcome everyone, and this is the Trippin Thompsons podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Victor,
And I'm the other co-host, Raquel. Good to be
and
here with
we
everybody.
it is good to be here with everyone, and feeling as if as the leaves start to fall in our great state of Minnesota, there's the expectation that the seasons are changing, and as the seasons change, it's always a great question to ask: is how's my wellness level? And so, especially because we're talking about entrepreneurs, I mean, we've talked a lot about entrepreneurs. We thought we'd spend some time today talking about entrepreneurial wellness and how you focus and sustain high performance as an entrepreneur, a business owner, a professional. So, those are thoughts. And I guess jumping right into it, how's your wellness level? And how do you define entrepreneurial wellness?
Oh, wow. Okay. Uh, how's my wellness level? I think that's a good question. I maybe haven't taken a wellness level check lately.
Hmm.
Um, but maybe let me start with defining it, and then through that I can maybe respond about kind of where I'm at.
Hmm.
And so when we think about entrepreneurial wellness, which we do need to think about, it's defined in a holistic sense and anchored into three key things, which is your physical health, your mental health, and then also your emotional health.
Hmm.
And I do a really good job with attending to the physical health side. So I have my daily kind of routine, if you will, that I have to get my workout in. And, then we also are pretty diligent about getting the dogs out for a walk, probably almost every evening, um, and get them some exercise too. For mental wellness, I think there are highs and lows with it because there are, and it kind of bundles in with the other one with emotional wellness too, that as you go through times as an entrepreneur or business owner that when things are good and you're kind of on that high and feeling great about decisions and how business performance is and customer satisfaction and all those great things, um, it probably are times that we're not checking in as often around how am I doing with my entrepreneurial wellness. But I
Hmm.
think it becomes more evident when maybe we're encountering roadblocks or not advancing as quickly. Things might not be going our way, whatever that might look like. And it becomes more evident at that time. And sometimes those are more challenging times to do that check in because we're feeling depleted in certain ways. And so trying to muster up the energy to do a check in and think about how do I pay attention to this and what can I do to get myself kind of back on track or back into a better space. How about for
Hmm.
yourself? Where would you say your entrepreneurial wellness is?
I say that one, I would also, as we were talking about this, I would also think about the spiritual component for me, which I mean, when you brought up routines, and I think in the morning there's always a routine that you know I try to follow. Usually there is some element of physical activity along with some spiritual, like meditation or prayer, and that helps me, I think, overall with my mental and emotional state when the day starts. um, I think where maybe I fall down sometimes is that as the day progresses, not continuing to check in to recognize, oh, okay, how is my battery? Is my physical battery burning low? Is my mental battery burning low? Those kind of things where, if you're not careful, different things can drain your battery, no different than our iPhones, right? Some days the iPhone battery says it's got 80% on it late in the evening, and other days all of a sudden it's at 8% and you haven't even reached 5 o'clock. So just being aware of those things, I think would be important. But overall, I mean, I think it's something where both you and I have paid a lot of attention to it. And the reason why it matters is because for entrepreneurs and for professionals in general, it creates, if you prioritize your well-being so that you have energy and resilience, to endure through the day, and it really leads to more sustainable success for one thing. um, it also can lead to enhanced performance in the long run, and personal and professional harmony. I don't know if you have things to say about that. I just know that those are things that really are important in your day-to-day life journey, and making sure that you are paying attention to them. So,
Yeah, well, so since you brought up like, why it matters for entrepreneurs and kind of disclose like three areas around why it does matter. I think that providing our viewers and listeners with some understanding around that, and you mentioned sustainable success, and as we think about this, this is for when entrepreneurs are prioritizing their well-being, having the energy and the resilience to endure the demands of building and running a business, and this will lead to more sustainable success,
mhm.
and kind of building up that muscle, if you will. But it's also being in touch and in tune with, like you said, your battery. As your battery starts to drain, we need to recognize that, and it's like time to take a pause, and I need to plug in and recharge. And recharging can look different for everybody, and the time needed to recharge also can look different. But these are things to pay attention to for sustainable success. And then you mentioned enhanced performance. So, how would you help the viewers and listeners understand more about what that looks like?
Sure. I mean, I think when we talk about enhanced performance, it's looking at how do you get to better business outcomes, and by having yourself tuned in to your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, you're able to be sharper. You can make more effective decision making, and those are things which will ultimately lead to better business outcomes and improved performances, because you are able to be more in tune and in alignment with the direction you're trying to go. You aren't feeling stress, or as much stress as you might if you aren't taking care of the physical, mental, and emotional sides of you.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the third one was, you mentioned personal and professional harmony. And this is around how we each individually think about maintaining boundaries
Mhm.
between work and personal life. And I know I've brought this up in other episodes that, you know, um, individually people may prefer to use like work life balance. And I don't. I prefer not to use that. I prefer to use boundaries. Um, Balance just in reality, in my mind, it doesn't exist. There is no balance. There's always something that is requiring more time, attention, emotional energy, etc. Um, so it's creating these boundaries between work and personal life. And it's really important to adopt these behaviors and this mindset for having long-term well-being. And it really allows you to thrive in your role when you recognize in this moment what is the priority. In this day, what is the priority? In this week, what do my priorities look like? And it really
Mhm.
helps you start to manage and move about your business as well as your personal life and ensuring that you're providing the time, the attention to it. Because one, it's gratifying to you as an individual and it's feeding into those areas around your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And it's doing that for you as well as for your business. And so, again, having healthy boundaries between your role in your business and then your role in your personal life, and that can be multiple hats in your personal
Mhm.
life as far as the role is that you're balancing. So anyway, think it was good that we provided some stronger perspective around those 3 things. And so how
Mhm.
about for you? Um, how do you think about and then how can the viewers and listeners think about the links between risk taking, resilience, and wellness?
That's a great question. I mean, entrepreneurs is inherently are bigger or greater risk takers, I think, because you are doing something where you are stepping out and building a business or creating a platform that has a certain amount of potential to fail. And it's not that other business professionals don't take risks either. I think it's just there's a natural and inherent way of doing it, and so because of that, there's also some things that it has to we have to be aware of in relationship to our wellness and also the resiliency involved in it, because if you take risks, then there's a greater likelihood that things like failure, rejection, uncertainty pop up, and those can generate more stress. So the wellness practices help to create kind of a buffer almost from that stress, and it allows you to kind of bounce back faster, right? And I guess I should say it's not just about bouncing back, but it's kind of how you actually um, manage your capacity over time, so that if you consistently do things from a wellness perspective, it really does prevent or lessen the likelihood that you have catastrophic breakdowns or failures. You don't tend to end up having as many untenable situations and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point that the resiliency aspect of it is helping to unleash yourself from the things that are holding you down,
Hmm.
um, and being able to continue to move forward. It doesn't mean that you're moving forward without uncertainty or concern, fear, apprehension, but it's the ability to just you get up today and you grind it out and you keep moving. You hit that obstacle, you get that phone call, you get the response that you were hoping wouldn't happen. But
Hmm.
it's how do you continue to move forward with the reality that this just existed? And the moving forward could look very different, because now you might be doing a lateral, you might be going forward, you might be going up. I mean, the movement could be free flowing in any direction, but it's really about persevering and keep
Hmm.
keep moving.
That's true, and I mean that really does tie into a theme around like motivation and sustaining performance. I mean, when you talk about that, um, you know, how what are some of the things that you think about, or or people in entrepreneurial positions you feel should be thinking about in order to create kind of this sustained motivation and performance that's necessary for um, long lasting resilience.
Mhm. I think about things that are rather ingrained in corporate life. And for people who have never had that experience and have always been an entrepreneur, maybe you're already doing these things, and that's fantastic. And if not, maybe these are tools that you could leverage to really help you. But thinking about what's my purpose for doing this, and what's the vision that I have around my business, and how do I want it to operate? How do I want it to perform? What are what's the destination that I'm seeking? And why am I doing what I am doing?
Hmm.
And that should loop back that question, why, the why. And the the recommended guidance is to ask yourself the why question 7 times to really drill down.
Hmm.
Some people ask the question, it's like, oh, because I want freedom, because I want to be my own boss, because I want to make a whole ton of money, and maybe I want to leave a legacy for my family and create generational wealth. And so wherever you're starting from, then ask yourself why, and then
Hmm.
respond to that and ask again why. So 7 times you want to be able to do that and really get down to what is that piece, because that's the thing that is creating the motivation for you to, so when things get hard, you're pushing through and you can have that sustained performance. The other one is setting realistic goals, and recognizing what is your bandwidth. What are you capable of doing? And I'm not saying to play it safe, because, as you just mentioned, that entrepreneurs might tend to be a little bit more on the risk taking side. And so push yourself to, but have goals that are realistic, because you do want to be able to attain them.
Hmm.
That's going to feed energy into you. And with that, celebrate the wins. No matter how big or small those wins might be, take time to celebrate what that is, and how, your efforts and the efforts of the collective team, the customers, etc., help make that win happen. And it's also important that we think about things to avoid disillusionment. So again, keep it realistic and attainable. And then the other part I would say around like motivation and sustained performance is that it's also equally important that we're finding ways to create space for rest, for recovery. How do we build pauses into a life that is fueled by just go, 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 and constant giving of our time and our energy outward to the business or to other people? And there could be just moments where you just hit pause for a couple moments in your day. And that's enough to kind of reinvigorate energy in you. There could be also times when it's like you have to be intentional about shutting down Saturday and Sunday and actually have a full weekend and know what that's like. Maybe it's not every single weekend that you do that, but appropriately. And then it's also okay to take vacation and not take your technology with you so that you're tempted to get sucked into business. But again, you got to find out what is the best boundary for you to operate within. Um, and so, when you think about this, sometimes it's nice to have something kind of like architected in a way, scaffold. And so that makes me think about, systems and boundaries, and, how does an entrepreneur approach their business and their mindset thinking about systems and boundaries?
Yeah, you brought that up, and I thought about this during when you're talking about rest recovery. Is that even within your day, you can structure things to allow yourself to have rest and recovery. It's really important when you are involved in trying to move something forward that you realize that there's only a certain amount of like focused energy that you really have during a sustained period of time. In fact, I think they said the average, I believe it's the average attention span for an adult is somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes at max. So if it's something, even if you're invigorated by it, it is oftentimes a great thing to get up and do a pause. If you're working, whether you're working at home or whether you're working in an office, I have seen people do this where they set a timer
Mhm.
and that timer goes off and they get up and they walk around even for a minute or two just to refresh and recover. In fact, if you have an Apple Watch, it'll remind you it's time to stand up, right? It's time to just shift and change your perspective or your focal point at that time and really get out and see things. So, those are some of the things you can do. You can also say no to things. I mean,
Mhm.
people don't say no enough. I
Yep.
think that um, sometimes it's good to say no just to practice it. Even if you eventually were going to say yes, you say no. Um,
And
I
maybe practice that with low stakes
low
type of
stakes, yes.
situations, right? Just to get comfortable with that. And sometimes it might even be, first of all, start saying no to yourself. I'm
Hmm.
just going to push through. I'm just going to work until midnight tonight. I'm just going to work through Saturday. Say no.
Hmm.
Start with
Yeah, you
yourself.
can, and you should say no to some things and yes to something. Whenever you say no to something, you are also saying yes to something else. And it's like what have an awareness of what you're saying yes to. And then lastly, also look at delegating and creating support systems so that you have other people to rely on. And in fact, uh, it's helpful to consider the idea of delegating first, right? Of saying, is there someone else who I know who can do it faster, do it better, or it just is something that they really want to do and I want to help build a rapport with them, and so it gives them an opportunity to work on something. And if you can delegate, that can be great. You can also defer things. you know Instead of doing it right now, ask yourself, do I really need to do it right now? As Briquel, you mentioned, it's like instead of staying up to midnight saying, oh, okay, what if I were to defer working on this until, tomorrow, and, carve out half an hour of time? I'm probably going to be more effective because I will be more rested and ready to attack whatever this thing is that I'm working on. So, um, in that regard, there's also this times when, like, instead of staying up to midnight, for instance, there's probably some indicators, right, of like warning signs and things like that that you may hit. And what would you say about that? I mean, like helping people recognize warning signs of
Mhm.
when they might be burned out or overwhelmed.
Yeah, so there's several, and it's important that you know yourself well enough to catch these early on. And some of those include a change in your mood,
Mhm.
maybe a disruption in your sleep, recognizing that. And it could be self inflicted. You're not allowing yourself to get enough sleep, but those things can happen. But also pay attention to when you're not sleeping through the night, or you're not sleeping maybe as long as you would like to. You're having a hard time getting to sleep. Um, your capacity that could shift too,
Mhm.
and maybe you're just not able to, you know, take on as much as you normally think you would or should. And it could be shifts in your capacity. Irritation too comes about. So, when burnout and overwhelm happens, stress naturally starts to spike, and irritation or irritability starts to happen. And so recognize that when conversations or relationships or just, how things are landing on you. Maybe you're driving or out for a walk and there's just things that annoy you, or listening to a podcast and it's like, oh my gosh, this is really getting to me. Um, Not this podcast, of course. I'm not talking about that, but other ones. And then health systems. So, as you become burned out and overwhelmed, then it does impact your health. And so pay attention to those things. And then, what do you do when um, you hit these signs and as these are coming forward, what should you focus on doing? Well, think about, how do I get back to a routine that I have found has been successful for me,
Mhm.
and get back into, okay, how do I be more diligent and put that into play and take action on it. You'll recover quicker um, the quicker your response is to being agile and flexing and getting back into something that is a successful process for you. Think about resetting your boundaries. So, whatever things you're giving up on or compromising around or extending yourself more than maybe you've got the capacity to at that particular point in time, reset those boundaries. And sometimes that means you need to renegotiate expectations with other people, and have that conversation. And that's okay to do.
Mhm.
And then also think about, is this a time where maybe it's rising so much that even resetting routines, or recovering, reestablishing boundaries, maybe it's just not quite enough. Is this a time that you need to just scale back? Can you think about, can I delegate things maybe at this point in time? Can I maybe say no, or not yet? Another version of no is the yes and. Yes, I'd be happy to, discuss that or talk through this initiative. And I've got
Mhm.
the ability to do that 2 weeks from now. So think about different things that you can, just temporarily scale back. Maybe it's just, I'm not going to work the weekend. I'm not going to work past 9 p.m. at night. Whatever those things are, just to help get you back into a better place to be.
Mhm.
So I feel like we've covered quite a bit of content here, and I really want our viewers and listeners to have some really cool actions and key takeaways. So, can you break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would, say that what you want to do is you want to find something every time you listen to a podcast that you could take away and make an action step toward. So here's some suggestions. First of all, you could start a wellness habit, right? Whatever that might be for you. You have to kind of pay attention to yourself. It could be taking a walk during the day or even in the evening. It could be that you create a wellness habit that that coaxes you to get off of social media or just off of the computer by a certain point in time at night so that you can wind down and have good sleep. uh, you want to be able to define non-negotiables that you have, so maybe identify some things which you are going to set in stone, right? That might be, I'm going to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. um, as you mentioned, Brickell, I'm not gonna work on like Saturday or Sunday or both, right? Or I had a leader who actually started turning off their phone after a certain time at night so that they really did it so that they wouldn't send any text messages, because they had a bad habit of like sending text messages when they thought of something at night. And so maybe you just decide to turn off your phone and not text at night, so that you don't disrupt yourself or anyone else who's related to you. You could also keep a journal if you wanted. Uh, Any other thoughts you have around that? I mean, I know we.
Yeah, I think that, well, expanding on the journal idea that, it's an opportunity to track, when stressors arise, what is stressing me out? What's the trigger so that you're more aware about how to manage that moving forward. Tracking changes in your mood or your energy. And then also, what are the things that you applied that helped alleviate some of those pressures and maybe give clarity to you? And then also create a boundary, and it can just be one. And think about that, about as far as how am I going to protect myself from thinking about protecting time and taking care of maybe a project that is a priority and needs to get done. And then how am I going to be purposeful about channeling my energy appropriately while taking those pauses, right? It's not about being 100% on 100% of the time, but having those good boundaries. And then think about taking just one boundary at a time. Maybe it's I'm going to start saying no, and put that into practice for like a month and get comfortable with it, so you become
Mhm.
conditioned with this and it becomes more natural to who you are. And then when you're ready, add another boundary as you start to recognize the things that are coming into play, that are creating triggers for you. How can you appropriately manage those and maybe apply boundaries to help you be more successful? Any final thoughts, closing comments?
So, final thoughts I would say is find something and do it and try it out, test it out. In order to build a habit, you really need to spend, a minimum of 30 consecutive days really like integrating it into your behaviors. It could take even longer than that. So, whatever you need, try it out and see what kinds of changes do I notice
Mhm.
in myself and my overall wellness that I have physically, mentally, and emotionally, and go for it.
Go for it. Absolutely. Just like you're going to go for subscribing, liking, following, and sharing this podcast. Just go for
That's
it.
true. Just
But
go
take
for it.
advantage of the things that we've shared with you today. You're rocking it. You're doing a great job as an entrepreneur, and you've got more that you can do. But take care of yourself along the process, and apply some of the things that we talked about today, and just see how much you can rise and soar, and accomplish. We'll do great things together. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for being here.